I don't owe nothing. He got all his songs already. How you think he got so hot? Came out with all them tapes. I did that. I put them hooks together. I made incredible music. All he did was rhyme 16s.
Well, you know,
I made incredible. I made the hooks. I made the melodies.
Yeah.
I made the shit, dog. I'm the man. I banged it just enough to get my room so I could ram his shit up, ram it up his ass. Right? My window was there. He tried to grab me. So when he came in the window, I punched him in the face.
Max B and Jim Jones used to be closer than brothers, but the day Jim flipped that loyalty was the moment everything changed forever. Max went from being his secret weapon in the studio to the man he'd soon fear seeing face to face. What started as music turned into madness. Word on the street was wild. People claimed Max had gotten with Jim's girl, wrecked his ride, and turned the Harlem blocks into a full-on battleground just to make a point. Max wasn't the type to back down. If you crossed him, he made sure you felt it.
So Jim Jones, compare the names. Look, Max Bigavel, Jim Jones. That don't even add up. That's not on my level, man.
Born Charlie Wingate, straight out of Harlem, New York, the man grew up in the heart of the struggle. His roots trace back to the Abraham Lincoln housing projects, where survival meant everything. Life wasn't easy. His mother was battling addiction and spending time behind bars, so it was his grandmother who stepped in and kept him grounded. She became his light in a world that tried to pull him into darkness every single day. But even with her love, the streets had a grip that was hard to escape. Still, Charlie had something special, a voice. As a kid, he sang in the Boys Choir of Harlem, a place that unknowingly shaped his future sound. That smooth, melodic flow, the laid-back tone, the hypnotic wave that fans would one day call wavy. It all started there, but harmony couldn't silence hardship. By 18, Max had already taken a turn toward the life that would define him, one that was as dangerous as it was legendary. In 1997, Max B got caught up in a robbery case that landed him behind bars for about 8 long years. But that stretch didn't break him.
Your name is Max B, aka Max Bigavel. We know Bigavel stands for Big Jig and Pac, right? But where did the
Big
name...
Jig and Machiavelli, baby.
Yeah.
Big Jig and Machiavelli.
It built him. He walked out in 2005 sharper, wiser, and carrying a whole new identity. That's when the world met Max Bigavelli, a name stitched together from legends. Biggie Smalls, Machiavelli, Tupac, and Jigga himself, Jay-Z. Max saw himself as the ultimate mix. The hypnotic flow of Biggie, the deep truth of Pac, and the boss-like mindset of Harv. When he hit the streets again, Harlem was alive with energy. The Diplomats had the city on lock. Cameron and Jim Jones were the kings of Uptown, running every block like an empire. Max reconnected with Cam. And through that link, he crossed paths with Jim Jones. That meeting would change everything. Jim saw the talent instantly. Max had that rare spark, the kind of energy you can't fake. He signed him under Bird Gang Records, and not long after, Max started working with legendary Harlem hitmaker Dame Grease. The chemistry was insane, raw, creative, unstoppable. Then came 2006, Max dropped his first mixtape, $1 Million Baby, and Harlem exploded. The streets couldn't get enough of that voice, that swagger, that effortless wave. It was like lightning caught in a verse. Wild, unpredictable, and impossible to ignore.
Boyfriend Charlie Wingate, aka Max B, a rapper, about the men's money. Then Wingate reaches out to this man, Calvin Leardom.
By this time, Bird Gang had 2 stars rising fast, Max B and Stack Bundles. With both of them in his circle, Jim Jones was sitting on pure gold. Max wasn't just another artist, he was the engine behind the hits. He laid down hooks and verses that made Jim's songs sound huge. Tracks like Baby Girl became instant Harlem anthems. Every time Max's voice hit a record, it took it to another level. Smooth, raw, and magnetic all at once. But fame couldn't hide the pull of the streets. No matter how far Max tried to go, that world always seemed to follow him. Then came September 2006, the moment that flipped everything upside down. Word reached Max through his ex, Gina Conway, about a flashy guy named Alan J. Plowden. He was known for living large, fancy rides, piles of cash, and a fast lifestyle funded by a sketchy mortgage and mail hustle.
It all began the morning of September 22nd at the Fort Lee Holiday Inn. Police are called there after a man is shot to death. The victim, David Taylor from Florida, was staying in room 227.
Gina spilled the details, and rumors say Max's mind started spinning with temptation. She later claimed he hinted that there was a quick way to come up, saying they could make a move. and everyone would eat good. What really happened that night still divides people to this day. According to prosecutors, Max wasn't physically there when it went down, but they painted him as the one who set it all in motion. Gina, who had her own troubles in the streets, took the stand and testified that Max sent her and his stepbrother, Kelvin Kells Leardam, to hit Plowden's hotel spot in New Jersey. The idea was supposedly simple: slide in while he was out partying and grab whatever cash was around. But from the start, everything was messy. Plans weren't tight, details were off, and the crew was walking into something way bigger than they ever expected. Gina and Sims reportedly spent hours just driving in circles, missing exits, wasting time, and getting more nervous by the minute. By the time they finally made it to the hotel room, Plowden was already back, asleep beside another woman. Then, out of nowhere, David Taylor showed up.
Got him in his drive already. I don't owe nothing. He got all his songs already. How you think he got so hot? Came out with all them tapes. I did that. I put them hooks together. I made incredible music. All he did was rhyme 16s.
Well, you know,
I made incredible. I made the hooks. I made the melodies.
Yeah.
I made the shit, dog. I'm the man.
Someone who was never part of the plan. Panic hit hard, and in the chaos, things took a violent turn that changed everything forever. That one moment flipped the whole story upside down. What was supposed to be a quick grab turned into something that spiraled completely out of control. Once Gina got caught, she didn't hold out long. She broke fast. To save herself, she sat down with investigators and spilled everything. Her statement stretched 169 pages long, laying out every detail and pointing straight at Max as the one who set it all in motion. She told them he'd promised her the world, money, loyalty, and forever if she played her part. When the authorities came for Max, they didn't play around. He was arrested and hit with some of the toughest charges possible, including felony-level conspiracy. His bail, a jaw-dropping $2 million. Sitting in that cold cell, time froze for Max, but outside, life kept moving fast, and that's when things got wild. The same man who'd signed him, Jim Jones, was suddenly everywhere.
I banged it just enough to get my room so I could ram his up, ram it up his right? My window was there, he tried to grab me. So when he came in the window, I punched him in the face.
Jim dropped We Fly High, Ballin', and it exploded across the country. The record was unstoppable, turning into an anthem overnight. But behind the scenes, Max was fuming. He claimed he had written it, saying he ghost wrote not just that song, but most of Jim's biggest hits. That claim cracked open one of the biggest rifts Harlem's rap scene had ever seen. Loyalty, betrayal, and fame all colliding at once. While Jim was out cashing checks, doing interviews, and soaking in the spotlight, Max was stuck behind bars, fighting not just for his freedom, but for his name to stay alive. 10 long months passed before the court finally dropped his bail to $90,000. That's when Jim Jones stepped in, but not the way a real brother would. Instead of helping out of loyalty, word spread that Jim used Max's situation as leverage. Reports say Jim agreed to post the bail only if Max signed over his publishing rights and locked in a 6-album deal under him. Trapped, broke, and desperate, Max didn't have many cards to play. With no real choice left, he signed. Jim walked away owning the rights to the entire wavy sound, and Max walked free but empty-handed. When Max B finally stepped out of jail in July 2007, he wasn't the same man who went in. He was colder, sharper, and filled with resentment that burned deep. He'd been betrayed by someone he once called family. The man who once shared his dream was now making profit off his pain.
Right around that time, Max B gets found guilty on 9 of 11 counts, including felony murder. And he gets sentenced to, was it 75 years?
Yeah, 75.
Max came home to nothing. No money, no real team, and a contract that left him trapped in a deal he never wanted. Meanwhile, Jim's name was ringing across Harlem. Every mixtape, every street DVD kept shouting out Max's wave, but it was Jim collecting the shine. The more people in the street started chanting wavy, the louder Max's frustration grew. He realized the truth. If Jim wasn't going to put him on, he'd put himself on. He wasn't about to stay quiet anymore. The loyalty was gone, the mask was off, and Max was ready to take it all back by any means that stayed within his reach. He got robbed of his money and his art. Plain and simple. Jones ended up owning Max's whole publishing catalog, which meant every hook Max ever wrote, every melodic ad-lib, every catchy line went straight to Jim's pocket. This wasn't just a business loss, it was personal. The friendship went sour, loyalty vanished, and Max was left burning with hurt and plans for payback. His heart froze over from the betrayal, and he walked away from Bird Gang with one mission: make Jim pay back in the streets of reputation and paper. If Jim wasn't gonna do right by him, Max swore he'd expose him and make the world see what happened.
Originally, you were sentenced to 75 years, but then last July, you said you got reduced to 20 years
and then to 12 years.
It didn't take long before Max found an ally ready to match that energy. French Montana. At the time, French wasn't the chart leader he'd become. He was a Bronx figure known for gritty DVDs that showed real street life. French already had beef with Jim from an earlier violent incident and rumors that Jim had been talking him down. So when Max and French linked up, it wasn't just a feature or a verse, it was a pact. They clicked fast and moved like brothers with a common cause. Now a new squad formed, built on anger and mutual respect, ready to bring drama and challenge the power dynamics Jim had built up in Harlem. They called their movement Coke Wave, and it quickly became one of the rawest, most unforgettable street takeovers in mixtape history. Max B had already seen how the industry worked. The fake love, the contracts, the power plays he didn't own his publishing, had no label backing him and no major machine pushing his name. But what he did have was a voice the streets couldn't ignore and a gift that couldn't be silenced. So he did what real hustlers do when the system shuts them out. He went underground. Max started dropping music on his own terms, giving it straight to the people for free. He wanted fans to hear what the industry tried to bury. And these weren't just songs. They were lyrical bombs aimed right at Jim Jones and his whole crew. Max didn't care who got hit by the message. His first strike came with a mixtape called Public Domain 3. And the cover alone caused chaos. Max posed in a graveyard surrounded by tombstones with names carved in like Millie Jones and Vanilli Santana. He was mocking Jim Jones and Jules Santana, comparing them to the infamous Milli Vanilli, the duo known for lip-syncing their way to fame. To Max, Jim and Jules were trying to ride the wave he created, and he made that message loud and clear with brutal lines like, "I know them dudes need me. I was giving them the loots, but them dudes done blew it." The disrespect was loud, bold, and calculated. Max wanted Harlem to see the truth behind the music. But Max didn't stop there, not even close. He took shots beyond the studio, tearing into reputations and personal lives, shaking up everything Jim was trying to build. Then came one of the wildest moments of the entire feud when Max unleashed a savage diss track that left Harlem talking for months. Then came the track that set the whole city on fire. She touched it in Miami. Max went all the way in, claiming that Chrissy Lampkin, Jim Jones's longtime girlfriend, had been with him in ways that crossed every line imaginable. In the song, Max rapped wild bars, suggesting it all went down in Miami, painting a picture that left no room for confusion. From behind bars, Max laughed about it like it was all part of the game. He was taunting Jim from a distance, making him look like a man being clowned by his own circle. And the streets couldn't get enough of it. The controversy spread fast. Clips, DVDs, and mixtape shoutouts kept replaying the track, and every mention made the story grow bigger. Jim Jones was caught completely off guard. He tried to act like it didn't bother him, brushing it off in interviews, denying every word. He said Max was just an overrated artist who never made it off the shelf. He even claimed that Max didn't write "We Fly High," the same track that made him a star, but Harlem wasn't buying it. People had already heard the reference tracks with Max's voice all over them. The streets started whispering. Was Jim really the one behind those hits? That question spread like wildfire, and suddenly Jim's credibility was under the spotlight. Then things got even crazier. Max claimed there was a day when Jim tried to corner him, blocking his ride in a parking lot, trying to catch him slipping. But according to Max, he saw it coming. He slammed through Jim's Bentley to break free and even landed a few hits before speeding off. It sounded unbelievable, but Max showed off the dents on his car like they were medals of war. French Montana and others backed his story, and just like that, the legend of Max B grew even bigger. Then came November 2008, the moment when Max B and French Montana decided they'd had enough talking. They rolled deep into Manhattan and pulled up on Jim Jones face to face. The two stormed straight into the building where Jim was recording, making it crystal clear that the city wasn't his playground anymore. Max later claimed that when Jim saw them walking in, he panicked and called the cops, a move that instantly turned the streets against him. Not long after that, the tension exploded again, this time in a Brooklyn club. Both sides ran into each other and chaos took over. Chairs were flying, fists were swinging, and even police K9 units were called in to break things up. It looked like something out of a movie, but this wasn't Hollywood. This was Harlem business turning real fast. When the dust finally settled, one thing was clear. Max B had done more than just diss Jim Jones. He turned him into a punchline. Everywhere you went, people were quoting Max's lines, laughing at the stories, and seeing him as the underdog who stood up to the empire. Even without label support, Max became a cult icon, a symbol of independence and rebellion. bound by unfair contracts ignored by the mainstream, he still found a way to flood the streets with timeless records that people still blast to this day. But while the beef had the city buzzing, something much heavier was waiting for Max in the background. A legal storm that could end everything he built. His trial was finally about to begin, and this time, the stakes were life-changing. On June 9th, 2009, Max B walked into the Bergen County Courthouse like a man who refused to fold. Cameras were flashing, his team surrounded him, and that signature confidence was written all over his face. His lawyers were talking big, promising to prove his innocence and rewrite his story. But deep down, everyone knew this was the moment that would decide if the wave could survive. Max's legal team walked into that courtroom with confidence, claiming they had broken down the prosecution's main witness piece by piece. That witness was Gina Conway. The woman at the center of the entire story, she was the one who had turned herself in, cutting a deal with prosecutors and testifying against both Max and his stepbrother Kelvin Kells Leerdam in exchange for a lighter sentence. Max's lawyer didn't hold back. He told the court that Gina was bitter and out for revenge, that she twisted the truth just to save herself. He painted her as someone trying to trade loyalty for freedom. But the courtroom isn't the block. Swagger doesn't win cases. When the verdict came down, reality hit hard. Everything Max thought he knew about loyalty, street codes, and redemption shattered in an instant. The jury found Max B guilty on 9 of 11 counts, including conspiracy, armed robbery, aggravated assault, and felony-level charges tied to the entire setup. The prosecutors convinced the jury that Max was the mastermind, even if he wasn't the one who carried out the act himself. According to them, he planned it, pushed it, and set it in motion, all so he could sit back and collect when it was done. The whole case hinged on Gina's testimony. She had already secured a deal with the government. Her murder charges were dropped down to armed robbery and manslaughter in exchange for her cooperation. That move landed her a recommended 18-year sentence, a far lighter fate than what she originally faced. Max's defense fought hard, arguing that Gina's story was full of holes, that she exaggerated, twisted timelines, and pinned blame on Max to protect herself. But despite their effort, it was too late. The courtroom had already made up its mind, and the wave was about to crash. In a wild twist, even Gina Conway herself testified at one point that Max B actually didn't know about any robbery at all. She told the court that she had used Max's name to convince her boyfriend, Kelvin Leerdam, to go through with the plan. The defense jumped on that statement, saying it proved Max wasn't involved, that Gina only started blaming him later out of heartbreak and desperation. They argued she flipped the story to look like the victim and win a deal for herself. But the jury wasn't convinced. None of it worked. On September 3rd, 2009, Max B was sentenced to 75 years in prison with eligibility for parole in 2042. Just like that, the man who once had the streets buzzing was turned into an inmate number overnight. Harlem felt the loss. The wave had been trapped behind concrete walls. While fans and artists mourned, Jim Jones looked like he was celebrating on the business side. To him, it seemed like checkmate. Max was locked up, unable to record or perform, and Jim still owned the publishing rights to all of Max's music. Every hook, every melody, every sound that made Max famous, all of it was still feeding money into Jim's pockets. And Jim didn't keep quiet about it either. He mocked Max every chance he got. In interviews, he'd throw shade, calling Max names, downplaying his influence, and saying he was washed before he ever blew up. Jim acted like he'd moved on, like Max was nothing but an old mixtape he'd already used and shelved for good. But behind the scenes, things weren't as solid as Jim thought. The wave might have been locked away, but its energy was still moving through the culture, and cracks were already forming in Jim's so-called victory. Even from behind bars, Max B refused to fade away. The streets still loved him too much, and his name carried weight that couldn't be silenced. Max stayed connected, writing letters, sending messages, keeping contact with French Montana, DJs, and indie labels. He made sure his voice still echoed through Harlem, even from a cell. Then came May 2010. And everything changed. Out of nowhere, Max scored a massive legal win that flipped the whole power dynamic upside down. A judge officially ruled that Jim Jones no longer had any control over Max's career or music. The court found that Max had already fulfilled the terms of both contracts he'd signed back in 2005 and 2007. In simple terms, Max was free. Not free from prison yet, but free from the paper chains that had kept his art in someone else's hands. For the first time in years, his creativity truly belonged to him again. Even from the inside, Max made sure to keep the music alive. In 2011, he dropped his long-awaited album Vigilante Season, and it reminded everyone why his sound was special. That smooth, melodic street vibe, that wavy flow, it became the blueprint for a whole new era of rap. You couldn't turn on the radio without catching a bit of Max's influence in someone's rhythm, tone, or slang. His wave had spread too far to ever die. Then, in 2016, came a shocking twist nobody saw coming. After serving 7 years, Max's new legal team dropped a bombshell that shook the system. They argued that his original lawyer had completely failed him. That instead of fighting for Max's freedom, the lawyer was too busy chasing his own come-up. According to Max's team, the lawyer saw dollar signs, hoping to ride Max's rap career if he somehow beat the case. That's when they filed a special motion called post-conviction relief, basically saying, give him another shot. The first trial wasn't fair. And against all odds, it actually worked. The move opened a brand new door that could finally bring Max closer to freedom. Not just musically, but in real life too. The judge finally overturned Max's original 75-year sentence, giving him the break fans had prayed for. In a stunning twist, Max took a plea deal, pleading guilty to aggravated manslaughter. That deal instantly cut his time by a staggering 55 years, dropping it down to 20. And then later to just 12 years. Since Max had already served several by that point, freedom was no longer a dream. It was finally within reach. He wasn't going to spend his life behind bars after all. His official release date was set for November 9th, 2025, a moment that fans had been waiting on for more than a decade. By then, Max B had become more than just a rapper. He was a legend. His voice, his wave, his whole aura had transformed into hip-hop mythology. You could feel his influence everywhere, from underground freestyles to chart-topping records. Even Kanye West tried to name his 2016 album Waves, but had to backtrack and give Max his respect after the Wave community called him out. Kanye even went as far as featuring Max's voice on a track, paying homage to the man who birthed the sound. Drake and Wiz Khalifa both admitted they drew inspiration from Max's style. The melodies, the smooth talk, the effortless cool. Even Jim Jones, in one rare honest moment, confessed that Max B could have been bigger than Drake if prison hadn't cut his rise short. Now, as 2025 approaches, one question keeps circling the culture. Are Max and Jim still enemies, or has the storm finally passed? From prison, Max made it clear he's no longer the same man. He said he's grown. A husband, a father of 4, and someone who's left the old anger behind. He sounded peaceful, even hinting that he might one day bury the hatchet. But Jim Jones, he's still cautious. He and French Montana rebuilt their bond and even hit the studio again in 2023. When asked about Max, Jim said he didn't wish him harm, but he wasn't ready to play friends either. The air between them stays tense, like two men standing at the edge of unfinished business. Thanks for watching. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more deep dives like this one. Stay tuned, and we'll see you in the next video.